Welcome to the pod, right? What's our intro? This is the Ann Parelkar show. It's not the Parelkar Ann show. Or do you want it to be the Cade Boyd show? You remember the Tom Green show?
I do remember the Tom Green
Yeah,
show.
yeah. I showed that to my husband the other day. He did not think it was as great as I did. What is wrong?
It was
Should
not
check that
good.
before I married him.
It was not a good show.
So me and Gretchen loved it. This is why we couldn't hang out in college. This is
That
on you.
tracks.
This is
That
on
tracks.
you.
Oh man, this like green screen effect is gonna make me crazy.
It does drive me crazy. But don't you love having my name surrounding you everywhere you look?
I do.
All
Okay.
right. So do you want to sing the intro? You want me to do
This
it
is
first?
the Ann Parelker show. And for Senate show. Ba 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 ba.
Did you just write that right
Yeah,
now?
right now. Right now.
Okay, get serious because we got to talk about something serious.
Okay. So today, Anne, you've been, well, first of all, there's a lot going on in the world.
Hmm,
But
don't
we're
remind me.
gonna we're gonna take things nice and easy and maybe a little less jarring of an issue, but still an important issue. And you've been wanting to talk about antitrust with me, and this is a big topic that touches a lot of different areas of our lives. And we're talking essentially about how corporations can use their size and powers to get us, the American consumers, to hand over as much of our money as possible to them, often without really giving us anything of equal value back. And this can touch housing, banking, credit, communications, data, privacy, energy, utilities, food and agriculture, insurance, investing. It's um it's all over the place. So, do you want to start with any thoughts, or should we just kind of
Well,
go
I think we
in?
need to talk about what I'm talking about when I say antitrust because I'm running
Yeah.
around telling everybody we got to update and enforce our antitrust laws. And to be quite honest with you, I don't even like the sound of that. So, what is that?
What is antitrust? Well, let's see. In a nutshell, antitrust laws are the laws that make it so that we're not letting corporations get so big that they monopolize a market, right? We don't want monopolies. Monopolies aren't allowed. You can't have just one company selling, I don't know, grapes, right? Because then they can say, well, we're the only company selling grapes, and therefore we're going to charge you $30 a pound for grapes because that's what we want to price it at, right? And I think when you're talking about antitrust, you're really talking about corporate power and corporate greed and how do we put a lid on that, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, essentially, if we kind of like take a step back and talk about like what we want in a good, healthy marketplace, we want competition. Ideally, we would be a country of mom and pop companies, right? Mom and pop shops, making things, selling things, and uh, so that like competition is really what's driving not only prices but also innovation, right? Whoever can sell the best at the cheapest is going to be the company that sort of flourishes, and that is what consumers need. Healthy competition drives down prices as companies compete for business to a point where it's reasonable and fair. And we can kind of think about this as like the more competition there is, the more choices we have. And choice, everybody likes choice. Everybody likes to have choice between price, product, all of it. Um, and competition also keeps businesses honest. It drives innovation, like I was saying, right? Competing to make the best. And what happens when we don't have competition and instead we've got monopolies or duopolies or oligopolies, right? Where there's only like several, these are big words that we don't need to use, but just like big, like one company or two companies controlling the market, they can kind of set whatever prices they want. And then another thing that is illegal under antitrust is what's called cartels. And cartels are when a few companies get together and set the prices, like they collude on prices. So they say, I'm going to charge $5, you charge $5. Nobody can mess with our $5 price because we're both charging it.
So there's no reason to keep prices down because why would they?
Why would they?
And then why would they?
Why would they? Yeah. And we've got laws that regulate competition, but also in America, we love the free market, right? You hear about the
Yes.
free market all the time. And the free market goes back to this idea. I think it's Adam Smith who came up with this concept called the invisible hand of the
Oh
marketplace.
no, I hate that. What is that? Don't do that. I
So
remember I
that
took economics in undergrad. I did, and I didn't like it then either.
I'm kind of I've done a lot of my own reading because it's something that's interested in me for like the past 15 years. But before then, I was like, I don't understand this at all, and I don't want to touch it. But then I kind of got into it. But essentially, Adam Smith taught us back in 1759 that individuals are generally acting in their own self-interest, right? So, like, if we're talking about consumers, they're trying to find cheap prices, good products. If we're talking about business, they're talking about product, right? And as a like a um like even though people are acting in their own interest, like to make profit by making these products, that can inadvertently contribute to and increase the overall good of society, right? Because we get manufacturing, what do you call it? Like lines of distribution, right? Manufacturers sell to distributors, sell to the public, or we get quality goods. Um, so it's not necessarily for altruism. You know, they're not trying to make us quality goods because out of their good of their heart, they're trying to do it for profit. But
So that
we
we'll
as a
buy their stuff.
right, right.
Right.
But the better their stuff is, the better their profits are, and the better it is for the consumers, right? And when I say consumers, I just mean all of us. We're all consumers. Um, so essentially, like the theory of the invisible hand, and it's like the key argument for free market capitalism still today. And the idea is the market is going to adjust itself based on the needs of all these individuals making their own choices. So, you know, lots of people are choosing that they need, I don't know, electricity. And so, therefore, more companies are going to be selling electricity, as an example, which actually isn't a very good one. But what they need and want is signaled to the people who make or produce the stuff, and everybody's small parts play into the equilibrium of the market. So it's like a web of mutual interdependencies, right? Does that make sense? Like we're all working together, the consumers and the producers.
Right.
Anyway, so
So
that's go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
So that's just like pure supply and demand economics, essentially.
Right.
Supply and demand, and then like this magic invisible hand, which is just the market sort of regulating itself. And so the overall idea that we use in our free market economy is that the market should regulate itself based on consumer needs without needing the government to intervene with regulations, right?
Right.
In theory, that would be great. And American economics, we love this idea. And that's how we get, you know, like laissez-faire economics. That's how we kind of get like these deregulation political leanings and stuff like that. Um, and all of this sounds really reasonable, right? The government shouldn't be in the business of telling everybody how to run their business at some sort of like micromanaging level. And I think we can all agree on that for the most part, right?
Right.
But the problem comes when you get monopolies and concentrations of power and wealth. And when you get monopolies, like we were saying, monopolistic tendencies are to drive up prices and often to you, monopolies tend to control the markets in other ways too, and we can get to that in a second. But you also end up with some economic inequalities. People who can't compete against a large, huge corporation, they might have a hard time getting into the market, right? A new business might have just a heck of a time getting started, competing, and providing that competition that we're looking for. And then we also get things like that are called externalities in economics, but that's stuff that happens on the side, like pollution, that isn't necessarily going to be controlled by a corporation who's only got profit in mind. And it's something that consumers can't really do anything about either, right? If you've
Right.
got
So like when I'm talking to people about how this corporate swine farm that's come into Kansas, how they're gonna, wash all of their manure off into our water systems, and that's potentially going to be bad for all of us. Well, we can't do anything about it. They're not going to just not do that out of the good of their own heart. So then we end up with stuff like the EPA that says, okay, well, you can't contaminate our water sources. Um, and okay, so I'm following.
exactly, exactly. So these externalities aren't really what we're talking about today, but they're super important. And that's where other regulation comes in. So this is like, I think we're kind of talking about a justification for like lots of different regulations here against corporate power, because there's a lot of different ways that corporate power can kind of get out of control. Um, let's
So
see.
like, okay, so we have the invisible hand part, the free market, right? Where we want competition, we want people to be able to open their own businesses. And I come from a line of entrepreneurs. My grandfather had a men's store, Lee's Men's Store, and the Vogue shop. That was the ladies' version. Um, and then my uncle, my great uncle, he had an insurance company, I think, back in the day. So I love entrepreneurship. I think the if you can go out, and I think that that's, to me, that's kind of the spirit of America, right? Is like you go out and you make a way for yourself, and you take care of yourself, you work for yourself, and that's what I wanted to do going to law school as well. Um, so I love that. And we definitely want to keep that because we want small businesses to be able to come up. We want people to be able to start their own small businesses and be able to live for themselves and work for themselves. Um, but when it gets, what you were saying is like when it gets too big. So we're talking about like if I wanted to make a cell phone tomorrow and try to get in the market and sell it, well, I'm probably not going to be able to do it because I'm not going to be able to compete with the prices of any of these other companies. Well, probably not because I think that they jack up their prices like insane. So that's probably another bad example. But let's see, what can we think of if I wanted to, I don't know, sell, here we are, we're stuck. It's a good
Tables? I don't
example.
know. I'm just like sitting at a table.
Tables. Yeah, I mean, okay, sure. If I wanted to start like a woodworking business and sell tables, um, well, my table's probably gonna be really expensive because I'm gonna have to get my supplies in small batches
Mhm,
from wherever I can get it from. I'm not gonna
mhm,
have mass production like IKEA. I'm not gonna have like, the plastic and all of that. And they're able to sell things much cheaper. So unless you really, really love my table, and really, really love me, you're probably not gonna buy my table. You're gonna go buy a table from somewhere where you can get it cheaper,
right,
right? Like,
right.
I feel like I'm like almost making it make sense outside of my
Well,
head.
I mean, the idea is so like if we look at something where is something that not a lot of us like where most of us use the same thing. Mm, well, if we go off the IKEA example, right? They've got supply chains, they've got deals already. They've cornered a market in sort of like prefab, build your own furniture. Um, so I don't know that you would be competing with IKEA, but if you were trying to do that, getting into that market, you'd have to come with, probably $1 billion if you wanted to actually
Right.
compete. And that's such a hurdle to get over to start a business. But I'm thinking too, like, is the ideal that we have many mom and pop shops making tables? I don't know. So there's room for balance. I think that
Right.
there's a tension that's inherent in all of this that you kind of have to find balance in. And I don't think that IKEA is a monopoly. But if we talk about old, well,
Right, right. I agree with you.
let's let's um let's roll back time and let's go back to the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age, America's
Are we in the second one right
expanding.
now?
We're gonna go to the first one.
We're in the
So
gold-plated age right now. Never mind. Scratch that. I should not say that. Shut up. I'm gonna shut up. Okay, go ahead.
So we go back to the original Gilded Age, right? It's the late 1800s, and we've got farmers across America from the East Coast just going as far west as we can. And at this point in time, the main transportation for goods and people is the railroads. And the prices, so the during this time, essentially any small short line railroads are being bought up by large companies and becoming like just being absorbed by these companies. And these companies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's a few of them. But they will also, the companies tend to form cartels, right? They tend to band together and fix prices, assuming we're going to assume they're way higher than there would be if there was more competition. If there's only one route between uh, Kansas City and getting your grain back east, you've only got one choice, and you've got to pay whatever that railroad company is requiring. So you've got um, American businesses just growing and growing and growing, and at this point in time, because the railroads were just so important for getting your grain anywhere, and they were charging high prices, the farmers actually started lobbying for the government to do something. And the government eventually came up with the 1887 Interstate Commerce Act, which is our first sort of law regulating businesses like this, our first sort of antitrust law. And we get there with the Commerce Clause, right? So it's constitutional because Congress is
What's
allowed
the
to.
Commerce Clause?
Lovely
It's in the
Commerce Clause.
Constitution, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Clause in our
It,
Constitution. I'd
so
have to look up the citation, but we'll get the citation and we'll drop it in the links for people so they can see.
oh, for the Commerce Clause, sure, sure. Essentially, Congress is allowed to control interstate commerce, and since we're talking about grain and railroads going across state lines, it fits right into that box.
Got it.
So the purpose of the Interstate Commerce Act was that what Congress said was that the railroads were going to be regulated so that their monopolistic practices, right, their price gouging, maybe like special contracts, things like that, weren't and their price collusion weren't going to be legal anymore. The railroads had to publish their route rates, and they essentially kind of all ended up having the same rates, but they weren't set by the government. And then a few years later, in 1906, the Hepburn Act actually set maximum rates that the railroads could charge. So we've got already Congress coming in and saying, "Hey, you're too big. You've got too much power. You can't exploit, you know, the public. You can't exploit the American citizens just to squeeze as much money as you want."
So it's just like the game, right? If I own all four railroads, I get more money.
Right,
But if I only
exactly.
have one railroad and somebody else has another railroad, well, I get less money because we have
Yeah,
railroads to choose from.
right. And monopoly, I never put that together.
I don't, yeah, I didn't until you started talking. I was like, oh my God, this is the game. Oh, we should just play the game.
It totally is. And the game was invented. This is not that relevant, but the game was invented to show like, hey, monopolies are bad. Hey, these huge corporations are not good for us. When you own everything, you really own everything and
Yeah,
everybody.
it's great for the owner, but it's not great for anybody else.
Right. Right.
Yeah. All right.
So we've got that coming in. And then after that, oh, where'd my notes go? We get the Sherman Antitrust Act, and that said, explicitly, generally, there can't in all commerce, there can't be monopolies and combinations and conspiracies and contracts in restraint of trade. And then when we're talking about restraint of trade, well, what does that mean? That essentially just means anything that's going to prevent or reduce competition in a market, right? Congress wants there to be as much competition in all markets. And when we're talking about a market, we can talk about like the banana market or the railroad market or the table market, right? And a market can be in a certain area. It can be for a certain population, right? Like maybe like there's a sort of like a farmer's market because they're all kind of like dealing in the same goods. Um, we've got, let's see. So we had the railroads, and then eventually we had Standard Oil. Standard Oil also got too big, and so they came up with the nope with the Clayton Antitrust Act in 1914, and that forbids price discrimination, illegal tying, which means like you can't require somebody to buy this like a junk product along with the product that's popular that they really want. And when I think about um, tying products, I think about like iPhone chargers. Remember before they were the
Um,
USB-C, and it was just like I think they're USB-C now. I don't have an iPhone. But every other phone, right? Like you can just interchange um your charger. And then for a while, I think you couldn't even buy some of the Apple product chargers. You know, you couldn't really get
oh,
third party.
really?
Um, Now you can, but either way, they're not always they're not always great. Um, and it excludes exclusive dealing. So
What is price discrimination? What does that mean?
that means you can't like charge different people different things. You can't, it's sort of like you're probably not going to find it like on an individual level, but maybe like on a contract level, right?
Like if I want to, like, let's say that I mass produce grapes, and there's a guy over there that I like who has a grocery store, and so I'm going to charge him less for the grapes than I charge that guy over there that I don't like for some arbitrary reason, and I've decided that he just can't have my grapes. I'm going to charge him a lot more, like that. So
Yeah,
like this
I
guy's
think that's kind of like you're supposed to just kind of have a price, right? A
yeah.
price at which you sell your stuff. And like there are like, you know, I think that you can get exclusive dealing contracts and stuff like that, but those are also very limited. So like if you wanted to make some sort of deal where you were like, I'll do this thing and I'm the only person who can do it here. Maybe you can give me a deal. Some of that is allowed, but there's no like across, like big time sort of discrimination. I think price discrimination is like long haul versus short haul. Like if you're buying this, identical or largely similar goods or services are sold at different prices to the same provider by the same provider to different buyers based on which market segment. Right. So you couldn't do like let's break it down more like let's say you can't have East Coast pricing and West Coast pricing, right? Like you can't have Kansas pricing and Missouri pricing. Does that make sense? Like you
Kind of,
can't
but I don't see why I can't. Oh, because of this act. That's why I can't.
because of this act. Because of this act. Yeah, that's the Clayton Antitrust Act. And so that's yeah, no tying limits on mergers and acquisitions, right? So that's just trying to like prevent companies from sucking up other companies and getting too big.
Like what we're
Um,
kind of seeing with like the news companies right now and television
right,
companies right now. Got it.
right. And you hear the government talking about like, oh, are we going to let this merger go through or not? And it's become politicized, and that's not great. That's a different issue. But essentially, yeah, they're talking about these laws. Are we gonna look at this merger and say that it's fair for consumers? Is it giving consumers enough choice? Is there enough competition? Is it going to mess with prices? Is it going to mess with access? And that in this in that context, it deals. I know the FCC has like a lot of other regulations it has to follow too, but it's the same idea. Um, boop boop boop. So we've got the FTC Act in 1914, which that forbids deception and unfairness. And it also
I
established
like
that,
how you're like a villain while you do that.
and so
Really sending that home.
a lot of that is like, so we talked about, oh, we didn't talk about price fixing, right? So price fixing is like, think about like airline price wars. So before, don't think about that actually. It's like price fixing is when you've got a lot of competitors agreeing to jack up prices, right? Inflated prices. So consumers end up not having a choice. So that's illegal. Market allocation, that's illegal. A bunch of competitors can't be like, you get Kansas and you get Missouri and I get Tennessee, and we stay out of each other's small monopolies.
Except that's happening to our farmers. Did you know that? Maybe
No,
not the exact same way, but actually, and this is why I keep harping on antitrust. But our farmers, okay, so there's right to repair. We talked about that, right? They
we will.
don't have the right to repair their equipment anymore. And
Right.
it's because of the tech on the equipment. So what they have to do is they actually have to transport that equipment to, let's say it's John Deere for the sake of whatever we're talking about. So they have to take it to the John Deere company, right? I found out when I was interviewing people in the industry. There's a fellow with the Kansas Farmers Union, and I interviewed a professor earlier this year at K-State. They are required to take their equipment to companies, those repair companies within a certain zone. They can't go out of the zone. So, like, let's say if they're in Kansas, it has to be in Kansas. They can't go to Colorado, even though if they go to Colorado, it's cheaper.
Huh.
Yeah. Seems
Huh.
like they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's news to me.
Yeah, I didn't either until
Yeah.
last year.
That does sound a little bit like market allocation, where every competitor gets their own little monopoly within their, area on a map. Um, hmm. Well, let's keep talking about what else is illegal. Another thing that's illegal is what's called bid rigging. Bid rigging is where, if you've usually got a competitive bidding process for, say, building a bridge or whatever, everybody's going to come, all the competitors come and solicit and give bids, right? The bridge
Right.
builder's like, hey, come give me your bids. How much is it going to cost? And bid rigging is where the competitors will decide among themselves beforehand who's going to win the bid, and then they'll just adjust their bids based on that, right? So everybody's like, okay,
Oh,
like we're
wow.
all going to shoot really high, and then Fred, he's the winner, so he's going to come in with his probably elevated for market, like normal market rates, elevated bid, and that's going to be the winner just because we set it up that way.
And
So
people do this. Companies do this.
yeah, it can be hard to catch them doing it, and you've got to have a lot of people working together. So it doesn't necessarily always work, but when it does, we get inflated costs. The taxpayers and private customers are the ones who who pay the price.
And so this
Uh,
was banned during with the Federal Trade Commission Act, right? The FTC Act.
I think so. I think that's part of
Doesn't really matter.
unfairness.
But it's banned. It's banned. They're not supposed
It's
to do it.
banned. It's banned. Yeah. Let's see. We've got a couple more things that are illegal. So the tying arrangements, that's what I was talking about, right? When a seller requires a buyer to purchase a second product as a condition of buying the first. Um, and chargers might not be the best example for this because you're not, I guess, required to separately buy a charger for your computer or your phone. They usually come with them. But just for the
Not
sake of this
anymore. They don't come with
discussion.
enough stuff anymore. I mean, the
Oh
computers
no?
do, but like phones, I think my new phone didn't come with the charger. Now you got to buy the charger too. And I guess we all have a ton, but
Well, and if they demanded that you buy it from them, then that's illegal tying. If there's other options on the market, then it's not. But when they require that, so another example that comes to mind is like printer ink. There's some companies that make you buy their printer ink, and if you don't, like the warranty becomes
alerted.
invalid. Which is sort of, I don't know. To me, it sounds like a tying arrangement, but I'm sure, you know, others would
Hey
argue.
man. Yeah, I think they get around. I think they get away with that one.
And one of the last things that's illegal that's specific to antitrust, because I've got some other examples too about just, big companies pushing their power around, is what's called exclusive dealing. And that's when a manufacturer forbids a distributor from selling a competitor's product. And that's illegal if the competition becomes locked out of significant portions of the market. So you might be able to have exclusive deals, with a couple of distributors, but if you've only got, let's say there's one guy selling tractors in, I don't know, a 50-mile radius or something, if he's made a deal that he will only sell John Deere and no other brand, that starts sounding like exclusive dealing, right? Because that market becomes pretty limited pretty quickly. 50 miles might be too small, but like that's the idea. And I don't know that that example exists. I just made it up. Yeah, and then so let's see, one of the more recent um examples that you and I were alive for, but it's not in my memory at all, is the breaking up of AT&T. At one point in time, AT&T pretty much owned all of the telephone infrastructure in the United States, like all of it. They did long distance, they did local, they did everything, and they subsidized their research and development at Bell Labs with the income that they made from operating their phones. So they could set the prices, they could do whatever. And the DOJ filed suit against them in 1974, and the AT&T saw what was coming down the barrel, and they were
Alive in
just,
1974.
well, wait. So in 1984 is
Okay.
when they
All right,
finally broke up.
continue. Proceed.
They broke up into a bunch of different companies, and that's why we now have competition in the phone arena.
In
So we've
like the
got
service.
the what?
In the service, the phone service.
The phone service. Yes.
I mean, it with like
Um,
Southwestern Bell and back
right.
then,
Yeah.
not now.
Yeah. And eventually, so like that finally led to a surge in competition. So we, like in the long distance arena, we got Sprint and MCI and some others. And I didn't know this, but as part of that deal, I guess beforehand, like maybe 10 years before that, AT&T wasn't allowed to sell computers because of sort of an antitrust issue that I just I didn't read much about it. But as part of this, the breaking up agreement, they could sell computers again, and so they were like really banking on AT&T and Bell Labs being, like the next computer superstars, because Bell Labs had actually like done a lot of computer research, like in the development of computers, but it didn't get them anywhere in the long run. But now we've got,
Yeah, I don't
now
have a bell.
we've got a million cell phone competitors, lots of different internet providers. I would say fewer internet than cell phone, but we've got choice. We've got choice. We can choose. So it was a good thing in the end. Otherwise, we'd all be paying the same bill to AT&T. We'd all be giving our money to AT&T. Um,
We'd be phone
let's talk.
serfs to the phone lords.
Exactly. We'd just
Ah,
be
ah. See what I did there?
paying our. What do you don't tithe to your Lord, do you?
No,
That's
you tied
for
to
the
the
church.
church. You just
You
you
just
just
pay
have
your
to give all your
taxes.
money to the Lord, I think. I think they just take everything. I don't know. I wasn't around. Veda didn't
No,
put that part in. It wasn't that part wasn't in Veda's paper. So her fourth grade paper on the medieval times.
oh, fun. That sounds fun. I wish we were talking about that. So Anne, something that you love to talk about is right to repair. Do you want to opine for a minute, or should we kind of talk about what it is?
Yeah, well, so the right to repair is something that I learned about last year. So if you're not, if you're not in an agricultural state, or you don't know farmers, or you haven't talked to farmers in a while, you might not know what the right to repair is, but they are fighting actually to get farmers the right to repair their equipment again. So back in the day, I mean, you remember back in the day when your TV would break and you just bang on the side of it and it would fix, right? Well, I assume that's what the farmers do to their equipment to fix it. Just kidding. But they know how to fix their equipment, right? They know how to fix the equipment itself. But because they put what on it? Technology, computers, now they're no longer allowed to repair it themselves. So you're not going to ever convince me that a farmer couldn't get out there and repair with a wrench and whatever else they use. I'm not, look, I can hardly change a tire, so don't. But they know what they're doing and they can do it. And but that right has been taken away from them because of the computer technology that is now on their equipment. So, like I was saying, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say there. It sounds too like the manufacturers have made it so you can't use regular tools on your equipment either. You have to have their special tools, that like they make and control. So if you can't
Is
even
that
like
right? See, that I didn't
that's
even know.
that's what I understand from my reading, and I might be wrong, but I believe it just based on. Have you ever tried to repair your own cell phone? Like there's no wrench,
Yeah.
that. Anyway,
Can't even get the thing open half the time. Anyway, no, yeah, that would make sense to me. I need to go look at some of the equipment that they have these days because I mean, I have no idea how it operates. So that's on my to-do list. So any farmers listening that want to give me a tour of your farm and let me look at your equipment and show me, what we need to do about it, please let me know. Anyway, yeah, so they're bound to these service providers, the manufacturers of the equipment, um, to have to take that equipment to them. So, and here's the problem with that. Like one of the bigger problems with that, besides just now they've got to pay for these people to repair their equipment and they could easily do it themselves, um, is the availability of someone to repair it. So in farming, it's very time sensitive. You have to plant at a certain time, you have to harvest at a certain time. So if your equipment's malfunctioning and you can't do it when you need to, if you can't plant or harvest when you need to, then you may lose your entire crop. You may lose your crop insurance. Um, and so these farmers, they can't get somebody out to their farm to repair it. They can't do it themselves, and they have to travel with the equipment to, I don't even know where. I'm gonna have to look at how far some of them have to go, but I know that I know they have to go to these companies and get them repaired by people that are, you know, qualified to do it or whatever. Um,
and I'm sure it's not quick
instead of
turnaround either. I'm sure it's like see you when we're done.
right. So it's really hard. This when I learned about this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so how are we even like allowing this to happen? This doesn't make any sense. And then when I learned about the regions where they're required to get it repaired in those regions with those specific repair companies, I was like, how is that a free market? How is that's so completely backwards to what we're supposed to have, by
Right.
binding them, even if they could get it done cheaper somewhere else, and even if they could get it done quicker somewhere else. They could potentially hire somebody that's qualified to work on these machines to come and work on their farms, and then they could do other stuff on the farms and be there and ready to repair, but they're not allowed to do that. So it's just it's just more control by tech lords is what I like to call them. But you know that.
Well, and it's kind of like if you can't tinker on your equipment, like you could in the past, do you even really own that item if you
You can
can't
own
mess
it.
with it? It seems really
Mm,
like you're renting it for a huge
renting.
amount of money that you'll never get back. And when
Mm.
it's out of service, it's out of service. It reminds me sort of like a subscription service. Um, and these are all what's called like rent extraction, right? Where you've got a company who's just trying to squeeze you for as much money as they can, kind of like disposable products, subscriptions, right? Where you're never actually going to own anything.
Anything.
And
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 that's my biggest we don't own anything anymore. Everything, and this is one of my favorite analogies to use. I could go take out a rotary phone and I could just throw it against the wall for no reason, right? No reason at all. Just throw it against the wall. Plug it in, it's gonna work. But this piece of junk right here, I think I got it last year, and it's probably on its last leg already.
but how many times have you thrown it against the wall and
I've not yet thrown it against the wall one time, even, you can't even throw a phone against the wall anymore. There's that, my TV. Like I said earlier, you used to just bang on the side of the TV if it's messed up and it work. My kid broke my TV with a wiffle ball.
We broke
What is this
my
junk? It's all just disposable. It's just disposable everything, and it all costs more than it used to.
and like the TV, so like TVs and all this tech that can fall under right to repair too, right? Like I know in Oregon we have a right to repair law, so you can go to like any shop that is a repair shop and get your phone fixed. It's awesome. I don't know if you guys have that,
I have no
and
idea.
um, and I know Colorado was like the first state to have just like I think just a general right to repair law, but it might be like a no, they have a 2023 law specifically about farm equipment. But I know
Oh,
ours
wow.
in Oregon, I think is more general. So we're allowed to repair a lot of stuff that for a long time, the companies just wouldn't let you repair. You couldn't get that special star shaped screwdriver to get into the back of your
Mm,
computer or whatever. And I feel like when we talk about this stuff, it's sort of like, yes, the companies have designed these so that they can get maximum money for minimum product that they're really giving to you, right? And the question we need to ask is like, do we want to be perpetually just sort of renting
renting
disposable
our whole
junk?
lives.
Or do we
Yeah,
want to
I've
like,
heard it. The term that I've heard, and I heard this out in Geary County the other day, planned obsolescence, and that's
mhm.
exactly what it is. And it's brilliant on their behalf, but it really is harming the general public, all of us. You used to get a computer, you buy the software, you can use the software. Now you have to subscribe to everything. Everything has a subscription these days. I'm so tired of subscriptions. I don't even like how many subscriptions do we have to have? I'm that's pet peeve. It's personal. This subscription thing. It's gotta stop. It's gotta stop. It's gotta stop.
Well, I mean, I guess on one hand, we have more subscriptions because there's more competition, but at the same time, like if you're talking about, I don't know, like your Netflix, HBO, Amazon, a lot of this stuff, they're switching who has what all the time. And
But
it
like
does
with
seem like there's a little
Microsoft,
bit of,
like with Microsoft Word, right? You used to
oh yeah, yeah.
buy the software. You could use it. Now you have to subscribe to 365. BCW, while we're talking about subscriptions, like and subscribe our stuff. Don't forget to sign up for our mailing list.
Well, and there's one other thing I wanted to say about farmers too is like, how can farmers be the self-sufficient people that they've always been and reliably economically viable when they're dependent on, these third parties who are not dependable to keep their gear going?
And
Like
third
how can
parties who only care about their shareholders that are halfway around the world. They don't care about our communities. They don't care about the people they don't care about quality for us. They care about cutting costs, cutting quality, just their bottom dollar anymore. They don't care about anything else. And exactly what we were talking about earlier, when they control the market, they can keep giving us lesser and lesser quality for the same price because we can't do anything else about it. There's nothing for else to do. We all have to have these phones. I don't know about y'all,
absolutely.
but every time I get a new one, I remember the old Nokias again, could throw it against the wall for no reason, and it would still work. Now I can't I can't look at it wrong without it messing up.
Yeah, I've got it.
It
Mine is
gets
about 2 years
offended.
old and it's finally like grinding its gears.
And they cost more than the old ones used to, and they don't work. I mean, it's just like I said, brilliant on their part, but screwing us all over. We're getting
No,
screwed.
absolutely. And I mean, if we talk about, the externalities we were talking about earlier, there's so much pollution that happens because of like the
Uh,
waste, right?
Did,
We're
did you
all
see
going through all
the
these phones, throwing them away.
Yeah, yeah. Did you see speaking of that, did you see the documentary Dark I think it's Dark Waters on Netflix? It's about the
Mm-mm.
Teflon thing in Pennsylvania. Oh my gosh, that'll disturb you.
Get mad.
No. It'll upset you. I mean, they caused all this kinds of cancer. And then that's the thing, right? It's like they don't really care because for the big corporations, what they end up having to pay out for the lives, and this is an extreme example, obviously, with the Teflon, but we're seeing increased cases of cancer in our society. Like that's just a fact of the matter. They're coming in younger, and we need to figure out why this is happening, and we need to address it. But with Pennsylvania, the Teflon thing, they caused all these cases of cancer, and I think people are still suffering. Or we look back at Aaron Brockovich, right? The everybody knows that movie. They poison the water, they kill people, and all they're looking at is if I have to pay for this wrongful death, it's going to cost me less than what I make. So they just
So we'll
they
just,
turn people into nothing,
yeah, into dollars, into dollars. And
into dollars.
the EPA recently has stopped, under this new administration, has stopped considering the value of human life when talking about the costs of air pollution. We're no longer considering the costs of human life. And that's incredibly upsetting and incredibly depressing, that all we're considering is the profits, essentially, the cost to a company to provide air pollution, measures, prevention measures. It's super upsetting. There's a case like that, that I learned about recently in Seattle in like the 70s, and the same thing, right? This guy was running a smelter, and they're like, oh well, we know that like 400 people are going to die if you run for the next week or whatever, because stuff wasn't capped, or something had happened. And the guy's just like, that's fine. That's just the cost. That's just
How is that not murder? I don't understand how that's not murder. Like if you tell me if you push that button, you're gonna kill somebody, and I'm even though I can't see it, and I push the button, didn't I just kill somebody?
Yeah, I think there's
Or if
some intent there for sure.
I don't, there's at least negligence.
I mean, it's like, how much is your life worth? I don't know. I wouldn't want to put a price on mine or my kids' lives. I wouldn't want to see my kids' lives as a line item number on somebody's
On somebody's
spreadsheet.
balance sheet. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. One other thing you wanted to talk about was like the patentability of genes and stuff like that. And just as a caveat, patents are a legal monopoly on an idea, right? The policy being that we want people to innovate, and when you spend all that time and energy innovating, you should like get something, just like starting your own business, right? You should get your profits. But it seems like there should be some limits on that, right? When we're talking about taking stuff out of nature and then saying, I own this, and if you use it, you owe me, even though it's from nature originally. Even, I messed with it to make this seed or whatever. But in my opinion, there's some gray area there for sure when it comes to policy balances. But what do you think about that, Anne?
I think I need to look more into it because I hear the argument for and against it, and so I haven't decided where I fall on it yet. I think you're probably right. I think there's probably going to be some gray area in there. I do like just as, a person, like I find if you take something from nature and then you say, no, this is mine. Like just like I remember one time I heard the Nestle CEO, this was years ago, so I don't know, same person, whatever, talk about wanting to, own water so that we all have to buy water. Well, in my opinion, I mean, we have to pay for it to come to our house and everything. But my opinion is we all have rights to the resources of this earth just by our sheer existence on it, right? No one else should have more of a right to a natural resource than anyone else. I mean, and I'm not talking about, you can own land and whatever, but if I buy up all the water and I say everybody now has to buy water from me or you can't have water, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. So does that like maybe I'm going like too far with the water thing,
Have you
but
seen
like
the documentary Even the Rain?
I have not.
It's kind of about that. It doesn't take place in the US. It takes place, I want to say, in South America, but I that might definitely be wrong. It's been a while since since I saw it, but it's kind of about that. It's a little bit,
Yeah.
it's yeah, you should check it out. It's good watching if you want to just get a little bit upset about the way corporations will just, ring us for all we're worth.
Yeah. So, and I know like there's I think I sent you the video of the lady that was talking about, how they wanted to patent seeds in India and India didn't let them. Um, so I want to look more into that, and I want to look more into like how we're doing things here. And I know that there are some farmers that, so this is my understanding, like some of the patents that they use are to keep like to to make it grow, like to keep off pests, to keep, if they didn't have it, then they'd be more likely to lose their crops, that kind of a thing. So I can see like if they're altering it, I don't like I'm really torn on it. I'm just really torn on it because also to me, like science is the study of naturally occurring things, right? Like the science is just what's in nature essentially. And I think I don't know. I'm gonna get into some different weeds, but like knowledge should be for everybody, right? Like knowledge should be for everybody.
I think there's something to like science for the sake of discovery, right? Science for the sake of knowledge.
Yeah.
And my understanding of the way some of these, and it's been a while since I, was involved in science, but my understanding of the way a lot of these work is that they'll go out, they'll get the genome of, a bunch of different plants, and then they'll figure out like, ooh, like tomatoes, for example. Tomatoes have these great pesticide qualities. Let's go find the
Okay.
gene in tomatoes. Can we take that gene out and put it into a different plant and give it those properties? And a lot of the times it works, And so now you've got this new pesticide or pest resistant um, plant that wasn't before by way of that. But it's also like, okay, there's a lot of different researchers who have put time and energy and effort into this, and some of it's publicly funded and some of it's not. But like for one person to be like boop boop and just then boom, I've got the patent based on
I
everybody
think
else's.
I think there's got to be a way to balance it. I think that because people deserve, and like you said, with the free market, we want to drive innovation. We want to drive that. And so I think there's probably a way to balance it better than what we're doing right now. Um, and I think it will fall. I think the answers will probably be somewhere in between. I think that that's most likely, but I don't know. I
It's
don't know what the answers are yet. But I mean, it's definitely something that we need to be talking about and we need to be thinking about. We need to be talking to our farmers, um, about what they think about it and what they want to see and what they need to see. Because I know that some farmers seem to be okay with it and others that I talk to don't like it at all. So I think it's gonna ultimately be a balance somewhere in the middle.
yeah, yeah. I think I just have one other thought. There's a lot of companies that will just aggregate patents that they didn't necessarily do the R&D on. They'll just buy them up, buy them up, buy them up, and then enforce them against people who are, breaching their patent rights.
Right.
And that's just another way. That's the big company picture, in my opinion. If you've got a big company amassing all of this intellectual property and then trying to go after people enforcing it, then they're not actually contributing anything to society except for that they paid the researchers for their patent rights.
Right.
What are you giving us other than problems
Well,
and
and
like
that's one of the things like so the guy that created insulin, right? I think he didn't want to, and this is just from my memory. So we should probably look these things up next time. But I didn't know we were going to talk about this. But the guy that made insulin, he wanted it to be available for the world, but then somebody bought it and now they charge exorbitant prices for something that keeps people alive and people have no choice but to buy that. And so to me,
right,
if you take something that especially when the person that created it has given it out and wanted it to be for the world and you take that and now you've patented it and made it expensive and you're profiting off of that, that's just wrong to me. I don't understand. That person wanted it to be for everybody and it should be because that's the
right.
person that came up with it.
You just came in with a wad of cash and now you're sucking the rest of us dry. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Well, I think we can probably wrap it up. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know. I feel like my brain is going to explode after this conversation. I'm going to have to replay this one and we're going to have to revisit. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
because I feel like I feel like there's a lot more that we can get into. It's such a big subject, right? Like antitrust is just such a huge subject and it touches everything.
It's
And
huge. Yeah.
but I do think it's very important. And I don't think that we've been enforcing our antitrust laws like we should be. And I know that there's criminal enforcement and civil enforcement. And I was reading about that today. And the government can use both forms of enforcement, but private actors can actually sue to enforce in a civil case as well for
Yeah.
breaking our antitrust laws. So that's something that probably a lot of people don't know about. I'm sure that the consumer protection attorney could help us out with that a little bit. So maybe I'll see if I can find somebody who's an expert on that that could give us some more information and make us better experts.
Yeah. Come chat with us, maybe. Cool.
Yeah. And then we will revisit antitrust because I'm going to study it better for our next conversation. And I'll let you know what I want to delve into there. But I really want to, I know we didn't talk about Microsoft in the 90s and some of the more recent things that have been done. So maybe we'll get into some of those. And then maybe we can really touch on what we could do with our antitrust laws now to help all of us.
Well, we got that
And then we
commerce
can,
clause just opening the door.
yeah, yes.
Anything you
And
can imagine.
oh my gosh, I remember talking about the Commerce Clause in con law, and that's all that I remember talking about it is that we did. We definitely did.
But that's how we get to everything. That's how we get to environmental regulation. It's like how all the
I
regulations.
remember because it was like, okay, if you ever don't know the answer, just write Commerce Clause because that's probably the answer.
Pretty
I'm pretty
much.
sure it's that. Just put Commerce Clause. Um, so yeah, so I'll have to bone up on that as well, and um, but good. But I'm excited about that, and I'm excited about figuring out how many ways we can um, utilize our antitrust laws now to make life livable for people again, because it's just not, and it's just getting worse. So, all right,
Yeah.
cool beans. Well, I'm gonna stop recording. Did you want to sing us out? Did you have a song?
What? What just happened? Did you see that?
I
Is that because I
don't
did
know. Do
this?
it again. You're a, you're a sorcerer.
What on earth?
Magic. That was so fun. Oh, well, that's a whole we'll do a whole podcast on this because now I'm excited.